Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midweek Program here at the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the Education Assistant here at the Arboretum. Today, we are in the Japanese garden because there is a lovely Illicium right here that it's purple. It's got purple growth on it, but we're not here to talk about purple plants. We're here to talk about green plants, broadleaf evergreens specifically. We have Mark Weathington here with us, our director, who's going to be going through his list of top 10 broadleaf evergreens. So he being an expert on these plants, he has a lot of favorites in this genre of plants. So it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say are his favorites. And with the announcements out of the way, I think we can pass things over to Mark so he can tell us what his top 10 favorite broadleaf evergreen plants are.
Thank you, Blake. And I do want to emphasize that Southeastern Plant Symposium. It is fantastic, and it is not just for the academics and public garden folks and whatever. It is for everybody, and the talks kind of come at all different levels, but it's a fun time, and you'll hear a little bit more about our auction that goes with it as well. So stay tuned for that as we go along. So welcome, everybody. I'm Mark Weathington, director here at the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. I feel like it's been a while since I talked to all y'all. We have such great staff and so many knowledgeable people that I've had to share the wealth and not been able to talk with all y'all every single week like I had gotten used to. So sometimes I come up with the topics that I'm going to talk about, and sometimes they are thrust upon me. And this is one of those times where Blake or somebody else said, Mark's going to talk about his top 10 favorite broadleaf evergreens, which is an almost impossible task. So to start off with, I had to narrow it down. I am not talking about trees for the most part. There are a couple things I'm going to talk about that could be looped in with trees. I am not going to talk about herbaceous perennials like cast iron plants and ferns and things like that. I'm not going to talk about agaves. I'm really sticking to shrubs because when I started getting broader than that, I was like, ooh, I love these vines. I want to talk about these vines. And then I was like, ooh, and I want to talk about evergreen maples and evergreen oaks from Mexico. And it just got too much. So I had to rein it in a little bit. And even then I was like, ooh, I'll just do this plant. And then I'll say, but I also like, these are some runner-ups. I forced myself to stick with 10. So I'm going to jump right in. Feel free to type in questions in the chat. Feel free to, at the end, we can jump in and ask questions out loud. Oop, I'm losing plants. Trying to get a few out here. So I'm going to start with a plant that any of you who have heard me talk much at all know that I love. And this is Osmanthus, fragrant Osmanthus, tea olive, fragrant tea olive, grape hop, what? Here's another one that I can't think of now. But Osmanthus, and in particular, this is the orange flowered one, Osmanthus fragrans variety aurantiacus, which is just Latin for orange. Osmanthus is a fantastic shrub. It is the plant that I always say is my very favorite plant. If you force me to choose one plant, normally I always want to say it's, the new plants that I don't know yet that I'm just learning, but Osmanthus is fantastic. So Osmanthus, great evergreen shrub, hardy into zone 7. Cold zone 7s can be a little trying for Osmanthus fragrans. If you're much colder than 7, if you're getting into 6B, 6A, maybe you could go with Osmanthus heterophilus, the holly-leafed tea olive. It's not quite the same thing, but it's nice. Osmanthus fragrans makes a large shrub. Ultimately, it can make a tree, and I have seen some ancient ones in China that were probably 50 feet tall. I mean, but they don't tend to do that in our landscapes. The typical species has white flowers. There's a variety called Thunbergii that has yellowish flowers, and then this variety aurantiacas. Now, the reason I like the orange flowered the best is, one, the flowers are very showy. They're bright orange. They don't last as long as the white flowered form, so the show is over pretty quickly. But this variety tends to have a much kind of tighter, narrower form when it grows, which I really like. It's easier to use in the landscape. It flowers in the fall. Always right kind of middle to end of September. And part of the reason I love it is because when it flowers, I know it's about time in the beginning of October for me to go plant collecting somewhere in Asia. It just always brings that to mind. Often it'll flower again in spring, not always. Other reason I love this is memory, and you're going to hear me talking about memories a couple of times through here, but a memory from my daughter when she was very young, and I was showing her this plant and had her smell the flowers, and she told me it smells like peach soda, which was very, very specific for a young child. I can't remember how old, but I always think of that. So special memories in a lot of ways for me. So Osmanthus fragrans variety aurantiacas, the orange flowered tea olive. Fantastic. Love that fragrance. Okay, that's one that probably all of y'all know that I love. If you've heard me talk, I always say that you shouldn't live somewhere you can't grow Osmanthus. And it's one that you can get pretty easily. I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between some that are going to be easy to get and some that are difficult to get. Here is one that's going to be very, very difficult for you to get, unless you get it from us probably, or somebody we've given it to. This is a Dendropanax. Dendropanax is in the same family as English ivy, Fatsia japonica, the Japanese Fatsia. There's a lot of plants in this family that I really like. Same family as Schefflera, the umbrella tree, and some others. This Dendropanax kwangsiensis comes from China and Vietnam, where it makes kind of a upright, open, thin shrub, maybe small tree. Part of the reason I love this is because I'm always learning about new plants, and this, I love the family, the Araliaceae. You can go on YouTube and find a video we did ages ago about the Araliads, where I talked about a bunch of different ones. They're just tend to be a group of plants that I really like, and this one is one that is young here at the Arboretum. We're just getting to know it, but when it's younger and juvenile, it has these lobed leaves. When it gets older, they tend to go into kind of entire leaves, real glossy, nice green stems. Flowers are pretty inconspicuous, but if it does flower and set fruit, there'll be little black fruits on there. It's just, it's a reminder that, for me, that no matter how many plants I learn, there's always going to be another one out there. So Dendropanax kwangsiensis. And as I say, if you put panax on the end of a name, I probably am going to love the plant. Okay. Now, another one that I love, and this is a large group, but I'm going to restrict it. This is a rhododendron. We all know rhododendrons, right? Mostly what gets sold, the large leaf evergreen rhododendrons get sold here in the Southeast, mostly don't like to grow here very much. We get the old cyanoides, which is a white flowered one, and we get Nova Zembla, which, if you know geography, Nova Zembla is an island up maybe in the Arctic Circle off of Europe, and it hates the heat, like many of these do. But there are ones that come from farther south. So this is one called Rhododendron formosanum. Comes from Formosa or Taiwan, where I collected this back in 2008 or 2009. I can't remember which trip it was. Makes a medium-sized shrub in the short term, can get very large in the long term. I don't know how easy it is to see on here, but one of the things I like is when the new growth comes out, it kind of stands up and it has these really nice silvery hairs on the backside of the leaves. And then as it ages, the turns a little more rusty brown. The stems, the young stems are covered with those hairs. Really just gives it a real attractive appearance after it leaves out. Now, before it flushes, it'll have umbels of white flowers, which are really nice. It's a beautiful plant on its own. It's got real great breeding potential as well, which is something that always excites me about plants, is what can they bring to other plants that we love? We can bring in other flower colors, but from other rhododendron, but this will really confer a lot of heat tolerance and root rot resistance to plants that sometimes suffer in our high heat and humidity. So Rhododendron formosanum. Love this plant. Okay. I find it odd to even think that I'm going to talk about a gardenia. I would not have been doing this a decade ago. Gardenias have never been my favorite plant, just because they always have so many problems, and I don't need problem plants for me. And I've talked about this one a few times on these talks, but this is a gold-leafed gardenia called Gardenia jasminoides Ogon-no-hana. It's the Japanese name. It is sold as golden doubloon often in the U.S., but Ogon-no-hana means gold from hana. I don't know if hana is a person or a place, but Ogon-no-hana. And when I first got this plant, we got it as a little cutting about so big, and I couldn't tell if it was supposed to have yellow flowers or yellow foliage and it was just sickly like gardenias often are, or what. But we planted it out, and as it flushed out more and more, you see these gold leaves, usually with some green in the middle, but sometimes all gold. And it looked pretty good all season. And then fall hit, kind of late summer, fall, and that kind of warm glow of the sun going down in late season. It would hit this plant while I was walking up to my car, and it just glows. And I fell in love with it. And strangely enough, we have fewer problems with this gardenia, things like white flies and scale and issues like that than we do with any of our other gardenia here. And so I love the plant. And then it flowered, and I assumed it was going to have the small little pinwheel type flower that you often get on, some of the hardier gardenias, because this has been very hardy, just a little leaf burn in a cold winter. But here's the flower bud right here. But when these opened up the first time, they were those great full double white, pure white gardenia flowers that are so amazing. And, of course, the fragrance will knock you out. When I moved into my new house 5-6 years ago, this was one of, if not the first plants that I planted right out in front of my house with a big blue whale tongue agave beside it. And I've got my prized blue ceramic pig sitting right next to it. So I'll have to show you that sometime. But love this plant, Gardenia Ogon-no-hana, or golden doubloon. All right, what else do I have? Oh, now, right behind me, this is why I selected this spot, I have another favorite plant. And let me tell you, this thing is going crazy at my house right now. Even my wife, who barely pays attention to the plants in our yard, was wowed by this plant. So this is Illicium anisatum. Now, I love Illicium anisatum anyway because most of the Illiciums, and this species for sure, are as deer-proof as you can get in a shrub. Deer just really don't like Illicium anisatum. Illicium, or anise shrub, this is the same genus that we get our star anise spice from. Don't use this for spice because this one is poisonous. So I love them all, but this particular one is called Murasaki-no-Sato, which is purple. Murasaki is purple from Sato. And again, I'm not sure if that's a person or a place. It is sold in around the U.S. as purple haze or purple glaze sometimes. Those are two different plants. Purple haze and purple glaze. Murasaki-no-Sato comes out this deep burgundy, almost black, and then fades to an almost indetectable, but just slightly visible variegation on the leaf. Just a little bit paler green than the rest of the leaf. And that should be purple glaze. Purple haze comes out the same dark, but then goes to a solid green. But sometimes those names have been confused. And often what I see being sold as purple glaze is not the true Murasaki-no-Sato because it doesn't have that bit of variegation to it. So this comes out this dark color. A couple of years ago, I started experimenting at my own house with it. And so I let it flush out in the spring, like this plant behind me is doing. And then I cut it back pretty hard, both to keep it kind of restrained in size, but also to encourage it to put out another flush of new growth a little bit later in the season. And it is amazing. It does that so well. So I get multiple flushes of this really, really dark purple. The flowers emerge before the leaves the new growth really gets going. They're strappy petaled little things, kind of white with a little pink blush to them. They're nice. They're not as showy as some of the other Illiciums like Woodland Ruby with big red flowers or Mexicanum Aztec Fire, but nice. And so you get those, you get the gorgeous foliage color. If you shear it back, you get another flush of this. You could probably get as much as 3 those new flushes if you really wanted to. But just super easy plant, sun, part shade. If you just let it go, it can get 8 to 12 feet tall and 6 or 8 feet wide. If you leave it there for another 20 years, it can get even larger than that. But if you do like I do and cut it back, it keeps it in kind of restrained growth. Awesome plant. Okay, I'll talk about a few plants that we have live here. This is one. This is a loquat. Makes the little loquat fruit. Eriobotrya japonica. This is one that we don't have a cultivar name on. It may have one in Japan, but we haven't been able to put one on it, so we just call it white splashed. And you can see why. It is heavily speckled and flecked with white. In some cases, maybe it's a white leaf that's heavily speckled with green. Grows into an upright shrub or small tree. Flowers with these kind of fuzzy, whitish, creamy white flowers in winter. If they don't get blasted by the cold, you'll get edible fruit that ripen up in the spring and into summer. This tends not to fruit very heavily, so I wouldn't grow this one for its fruit, but there are others that are great for that. There's two good variegated loquats that I know. There's this speckled one, and then there's one with a white edge to the leaf. And part of the reason this is my favorite, beyond the fact that it's just a cool plant, is that I remember seeing, when I saw a variegated loquat for the first time, it was at a longtime friend of the Arboretum. This was before I was at the Arboretum, so it's a longtime friend of mine as well, Ted Stevens at Nurseries Caroliniana. And I was visiting the nursery, and we were in his propagation house, and we went out the back door, and he had a variegated loquat that was root bound. It was laying on its side outside, and he set it back up, and he said, well, this thing keeps falling over. He had gotten it from Japan. I don't remember if it was the white-edged one or the speckled one, but I remember it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. I did not know something like that existed in this world. Had to be 25 years ago. And he was so nonchalant about it, and all I could think is, why isn't he propagating this plant? It's going to die in this pot. And then why isn't he propagating this plant so I can have it and take care of it and love it like my own? It took many years for me to get a variegated loquat of my own, but now I have one. I have two, this form and the one with the white edge. The one with the white edge is growing in a pot in front of my house. This one's growing in my yard. This is kind of interesting. It's one of a couple of plants I've seen that's like this, where it comes out with this speckled variegation in its first flush of the season in the spring, and then it'll flush out growth again later, which is almost entirely green. Very little of that speckling. And it always does that. It kind of alternates that flush of variegated and not quite so variegated foliage. It's been hardy here at the Arboretum for years and years and years. It's a great little plant. It's slow to get going. It's slow to have much to propagate on it, but once it really gets going, it's phenomenal. And I just walked by it earlier this spring in the garden, and boy, it all of a sudden, it's like your kids when they're little kids, they're little kids, they're little kids. Wow, they're adults that are taller than you and bigger than you. And hard to come by this plant because it's not much to propagate from them. Not many people have it, but this will be at our Southeastern Plant Symposium, the Rare Plant Auction. You can bid online or in person at the auction, June 16th and 17th, 2023. So you do have an opportunity to get this plant. Same can be said for this one. And this one I love because of its connection to the Arboretum, but also it's a phenomenal new plant, and it comes from a great friend of mine. So this is Viburnum odoratissimum variety awabuki, or sometimes Viburnum awabuki. And the connection to the Arboretum is that one of the most widely available plants in the Southeast that comes from the J.C. Raulston Arboretum introductions from long ago is Viburnum awabuki, or Viburnum odoratissimum awabuki chindo, which was a collection from Korea that J.C. made back in the mid 80s. You can find it all over, planted as hedges and all kinds of things. This is a variegated form, and all we have in terms of a name is variegated form. Another one from Japan. So it's got because the species got that connection with the Arboretum, but also I received it from Ozzie Johnson, who's a longtime friend from the Atlanta area. And when I was at the Atlanta Botanic Garden, he used to go to Japan and bring back plants from nurseries and bring them to the Botanic Garden and blow me away all the time. So this is a plant that I have coveted in his garden for maybe a decade. I have gotten cuttings now and then and have never successfully rooted them. The last batch of cuttings I got, actually we had a few root. So now we have a few. We have it for the Arboretum. We also will have it for our Southeastern Plant Symposium. And it'll grow into a pretty good sized plant. It's very slow doing it, but it'll grow, if you have it long enough, 12 feet tall. But in your garden, think of it more 4 to 6 feet in the next 7-8 years. Okay, another one. Now, this is going back to that Dendropanax I showed earlier in terms of family. This is a Fatsia. Fatsia polycarpa. This is one we named Jade Dragon. Now, Fatsia japonica I've known for decades and decades and decades, but I never realized there was a Taiwanese species of Fatsia until 2008, when I was getting ready to make my first trip to Taiwan for collecting. And it kind of blew my mind that there was another species. I've since learned there is a third species, Fatsia oligocarpella, which is from a tropical island in the Japanese archipelago, which we have at the Arboretum. We have not planted it out yet to really see that it is truly in subtropical, but we will. So just this species was amazing to me. And I remember when I saw this plant in the wild, so different looking than Fatsia japonica, with these very deeply lobed and incised leaves and much, much quicker growth. And we've grown a bunch of them here and finally named one that we really think was superior called Jade Dragon. And I love this plant. I grow quite a few of them at my house. We've offered this for sale. We've passed it around to nurserymen. Really think this is an amazing evergreen. There's another one that will likely be in our Southeastern Plant Symposium auction, just because it hasn't really gotten out to say in major sales yet. All right, got a couple more larger plants to show. Go to this one, and this is Aca or Phaeoha celowiana. I learned it as Phaeoha celowiana. It has became Aca, which is just a terrible name, Aca. But I hear rumors that we're going to move this back to Phaeoha, which is harder to spell, but sounds so much nicer. This is the pineapple guava. Pineapple guava makes this beautiful evergreen shrub. It is, it's got this kind of bluish green top to the leaf, and then this real silvery bottom of the leaf and silvery stems. Makes a large rounded shrub. This is a seedling, and it's got really large leaves. And I don't know if that's just because of youthful vigor. I think probably because of fertilization and water in the nursery, it's growing really large. But we grow them outside here as well. I went and took a couple of pieces of one. This is a variety called Opal Star. And you can see it's got those same leaves, a little bit smaller, a little bit thicker than this seedling grown one. But these are the flowers on it, just starting to flower. And it's in the myrtle family. And if the flowers get pollinated and the season's long enough, which is often our issue, season not being long enough, you'll get really delicious fruit. But they don't always have time to form or ripen here. A lot of forms, not all of them. I don't know about this one. The petals of the leaves are kind of thick and waxy. Yeah, this is a good one, and are super sweet. This one actually has a little bit of a clove flavor to it. They're really good. And I've had a lot of edible flowers, and most of them are just that. They're edible. These are actually good. The interns always love this. I'm gonna mess up the focus for a second. I'm passing this on to Blake because I'm betting he wants to try it.
Yeah. Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. That belongs in salads, 100%.
Yeah. It's crazy. So pineapple guava. Now, there are not a lot of pineapple guava being grown in the U.S. One, it's a gorgeous plant. I've seen it used as a real specimen plant in Florida, and in California they grow it some. You know, it's not going to be a crop that they're going to ship because it's got such a short fruiting season, and the fruit are not really, probably not shippable. But I think it has some real potential as like a farm market type fruit. And I think it's great in, home landscapes because it's beautiful evergreen, it's a gorgeous plant. The deer don't seem to like it, and you get fruit from it. But there hasn't been a lot of work in this part of the country with it. So we know some are too tender to grow here. So we need to get hardier forms. We also need to make sure we get ones that flower early enough and the fruits ripen quickly enough that they'll ripen before we get to the fall. So it's a plant that I really want to collect both wild germplasm, where it grows wild in South America. I want to get cultivated material. There's some places in Oregon that are growing quite a few different ones that are actually being sent to us, hopefully this week. They may show up tomorrow. But also in New Zealand, they grow this quite a bit. And actually, most of our named selections here, like the opal star that I was eating, came from a trip to New Zealand. So I really want to go wild collect in South America, but also go back to New Zealand with a real focus on collecting these, both for fruit and ornamental characteristics. When I got back from New Zealand, a former employee of the Arboretum and colleague, John Rothling at Rinalda Gardens, when I got back, 2014, 13, when I was there, he said, "Ooh, did you see the gold margined pineapple guava?" Which I said, "No, I did not. Didn't know I should be looking for it there. Perhaps you could have told me about it." He's like, "Oh yeah, I saw it there one time when I was there." And it's one of those plants that I got to get. Awesome plant, though. I love these ornamental edibles. This is the most ornamental to me of ornamental edibles. Really one of my favorite plants. My big, I grow a couple of them at home. Grow that opal star. Grow a few with kawatiri. That's a New Zealand name that it has. A Maori name, kawatiri. And I love growing other vines through it. I grow a small flowered yellow clematis through it, and a pink flowered vining Bauhinia unionensis through one. So I love that they kind of add that other sequence of flower there. Okay, last plant. We've got a couple different forms of it. So I took a cutting off of one in the garden and got one out of the nursery. If you read Blake's description of this talk, he mentioned the Osmanthus and the Aucuba, two of my favorite plants. And I was looking at the Aucuba and I was like, well, which cultivar do I like? Which one? And I finally decided it's a different species is the one that I love. This is Aucuba omiensis. And part of the reason I love this, beyond it being an Aucuba, is it's one that I killed many, many times. The only form that was in the U.S., I believe was brought in by the Arboretum long before me. and was passed around as just as either the Hillier form or the Lancaster form for Roy Lancaster. And I've seen his original plant growing at his house, and Roy Lancaster is kind of a horticultural hero of mine, so I'm kind of a fanboy. So going to see it at his garden was amazing. But it wasn't hardy, his form that he collected. So it was really when I went to China one year and went to Imei-shan, Mount omiensis, Aucuba omiensis, that I got to see the plant. So it's got that connection with Roy Lancaster. It's got that memory of collecting it in the wild. And it's also one of those plants that's confused in the literature, in taxonomy. This is considered in the flora of China to be lumped into Aucuba chinensis. Now, I have seen Aucuba chinensis in many places. It seems like they'll lump anything that they're not quite sure what it is into chinensis. This is a different plant than Aucuba chinensis. I don't care what anybody else tells you, they are vastly, vastly different plants. It's got these huge leaves, very thick and leathery. The fruits are much larger, the flowers are much larger. These tend, if you let them go, to grow as single-stemmed, single-trunked plants as opposed to multi-trunk. I've seen these growing like trees. And when I was on Imei-shan, Mount Omei, hiking down from the top, I saw Aucuba chinensis, I saw Aucuba obcordata, and then we entered a zone where we only saw Aucuba omiensis. We walked all the way through that zone, and then we would see Aucuba chinensis again. Did not see them overlapping at all. This was so distinct where this was. And, you know, doesn't all look exactly the same, but it is easily identifiable. The only thing close and looking like this that I've ever seen is a species that grows much farther south, southern Yunnan into Vietnam, which is Aucuba Eriobotrya, which brings us back to the loquat, which is Eriobotrya. So it is the other one is the loquat-leaved Aucuba Eriobotrya. Love these plants. Isn't that great? So this is a plant that I really like. Been growing the forms that we've collected, and we've gotten some other forms through from Japan, from people who collect in China as well, have been so much hardier than the old Lancaster or Hillier form. We've got 3 or 4 of our own wild collections. We've got several collections from Japan, from Mr. Hirose. Really, we're finding some really cool things with this. The one that got away, there was a white fruited one. Normally you have the red fruits. There was a white fruited one that I collected fruits from and collected seed. They did not germinate. Now I'm wishing I had collected cuttings from it. I know exactly where it is though. So one of these days, got to just make a quick trip over to China to get some more seed or cuttings from that. I think that's 9. I had another plant, but I think I dropped it somewhere.
Yeah, it's there on the front corner.
All right. And I got to get this one because I only remembered that I had it because I was talking about Roy Lancaster, my horticultural hero. This is a very rare plant. I was staying with Roy. I was going to visit him, and he said, "Oh, why don't you stay with Sue and I?" Yeah. Couldn't sleep for a week before I went to England. So I stayed for a couple of days with Roy Lancaster, and he showed me around his home garden. And we were talking about plants and looking at plants, and we both have an appreciation, perhaps more than is fitting, for Mahonia. And there's so many great Mahonia. The ones you can get, you know, like before Soft Caress and some of these newer ones came out, the ones you could get you could buy are some of the worst ones. But there's so many great species of this. So this is one, Mahonia shenii. And as we were going around the garden, he said, I'm going to show you a couple of plants. And he took me over and showed me Mahonia shenii. And that's this plant. No spines, except for a little bit at the tip. Very kind of compact, dense plant. Very different looking than any other Mahonia I'd ever seen. And then he showed me another one, Mahonia microphylla, which had the leaflets look like little boxwood leaves. A whole bunch of them. I don't have that one. But I was able to bring a piece of this back. It's not easy to bring Mahonias in. They have to be screened for some diseases, but was able to bring this back. And shared the first little, we got 2 or 3 rooted cuttings, and we shared one with the plant breeder, Tom Ranney from NC State, our collaborator. And just this spring, we planted out a bunch of hybrids that he has been breeding with this plant. And what was fascinating is up in the mountains where he is and down with us, the hybrids with Mahonia shenii proved to be much hardier than we ever thought they would be, which that's exciting. So some real different textures and looks than you get from some other hardy Mahonias. So real excited about that. Plus, this came directly from Roy Lancaster's garden. So, kind of fanboy about this as well. So I could probably name another 20 of my favorite broadleaf evergreens. Oh, there's some entire leaf, non-spiny hollies that we collected in China in 2019. Oh, they were amazing. I love some of the linderas and the cinnamomums, and that's not even getting into the subtropical stuff. Oh, Exbucklandia, I could have done that. There are just too many. So I limited it as best I could. Some available, some not so available. But pretty much everything I've talked about, I think everything that I've talked about is either available through specialty nurseries, or we have distributed, given it away, sold it, auctioned it at one of our various distributions, and we'll continue to do that. If you're a member, you get some of those notices early. Sometimes you get exclusive chances to do that. So do encourage you to join the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. Or if you don't want to do that, join whatever botanic garden sounds nice to, is close to you or that you like, because we share with botanic gardens all the time, and maybe they'll share with you as well. But we do really encourage you to support whatever botanic garden or arboreta is near you, because we all need support. So thank you very much. Love talking about this. Do we have any questions?
We have a few questions, sure. Somebody asked, how big does the golden gardenia get?
The golden gardenia, so the biggest one we have so far is about 3.5 feet tall, 4 feet wide. It's been in the ground for coming on a decade now. So
whereabouts in the garden is that one?
That is right as you come in the garden. You come through the brick circle at the parking lot and walk down towards the McSwain Education Center, and it's right there on your left. Look for the big gold plant.
And one thing I would like to point out is that while you were holding up that little cutting of that particular cultivar, it matched your shirt so perfectly. The color contrasted the blue, but also the pineapples highlighted. It was truly spectacular.
Well, it was intentional.
Absolutely. And I am scrolling. Okay, someone's asking, well, they say that Michael Durr mentions an NCSU hardy pineapple guava. Does such a thing exist?
Such a thing does exist. The NCSU hardy pineapple guava is, I think it's been here since, I think, before the Arboretum. It is touted as being hardier than others. I question that, exactly how much hardier it is. I think it was probably obtained, there were probably a bunch of seedlings planted out, and it was the hardiest of those. But I don't know, and this is why I want to collect a bunch of germplasm. I don't know if it's hardier than a lot of the other named varieties that have a better fruiting quality and capability. So it does have very tasty flowers, though. It has some of the best tasting flowers of any I've had. But it does exist. And this is something I meant to mention with the pineapple guava. They are a nightmare to propagate.
Okay.
They are so difficult. They'll root, but you have to stick 100 to get 10 or 20 to root. They can be grafted, but you have to have a seed source to grow seedlings to graft them.
Okay. So someone's asking which, if any, of these are high on deer menus?
Let's see. Oh, the Fatsia polycarpa has not been as bad for me in terms of deer eating it as Fatsia japonica, but yeah, the deer will eat this for sure. The pineapple guava they haven't messed with. I planted some really small loquats like this size, and they've eaten them. But when I've planted big ones, they have not bothered them. The Mahonia, never had a problem. Aucuba omiensis, I've never had a problem. They eat other Aucubas, but not that one. Don't know about the variegated viburnum. Gardenias are usually pretty tolerant. Don't have a lot of deer. I've never had problems with Osmanthus. So, yeah.
Great. Okay. And one final question. Where can we find the Aca Siloiana NCSU hardy?
Where can you find the Aca NCSU hardy? Here. We're working on one of the things we want to do as part of the pineapple guava research that I'd like to do, and we are submitting grants for that. If anybody would like to support that research, talk to me. But part of that is not just collecting all that germplasm, but really doing some in-depth work on propagation, clonal propagation, so that you don't have to you don't get 20%, 10 or 20% success rate, because that's just not enough for nurseries to bother with it. So we really would like to get it up more into that 60, 70% success rate. So we're going to be looking at different rates of rooting hormones, different types of rooting hormones, and different timing to see when we get the best results.
Okay. Well, personally, I hope that you get good results with that, because that is an incredibly exciting plant. So that is all the questions we have. So thank you very much, Mark, for pulling this talk together. It was incredibly informative, and it was wonderful to see all these wonderful plants and like some variations on some familiar plants, but really exciting variations that aren't quite so familiar.
Yeah, and that's what I like, kind of the things but just a little bit skewed from them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. And thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. We will be doing the midweek program again next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. So I do hope we will see you all then. Y'all take care.